Hello, beautiful soul. Greetings from Ibiza. I'm Ilya, and I'd like to welcome you to the Holographic Universe. The Holographic Universe is an evolutionary system for your evolution that I have developed as a stellar fusion of human design, gene keys, and the human experience. Essentially, what I do is I put together a personalized multimedia encyclopedia of a fusion of human design and gene keys for individuals, families, and businesses to aid them in their growth and evolution on the earthly plane. For those who may be interested, there will be a link in the comments to my portfolio site where you can examine that in more detail. But for now, let's move on to today's topic. Okay, so as this video is about the genetic and lunar new years to come in the Gregorian year 2025. Before I begin exploring the lunar cycles for the year to come, I'd like to share a bit about two keys that are going to play key roles in the year to come. The first one is Gene Key 41, or Hexagram 41 in the I Ching. And if you may be wondering how the genetic year has to relate with the Lunar New Year, well, they both tie back to Taoist origins with the I Ching, as all of the gates and gene keys, depending on whether you are looking at human design or gene keys, are correlated to the hexagrams of the I Ching. And so the genetic new year begins when the sun enters into gene key 41, or into gate 41 or hexagram 41, however you want to look at it. This is the second degree of Aquarius. And this is a time where all of us are invited to ask ourselves, are we a victim of our dreams? Do we choose to remain dreaming? Or do we use this urge to evolve to take action? And as you can see, for those of you who haven't read the Gene Keys, you absolutely should. It's an amazing, amazing self-understanding system. The 41st Gene Key represents the reflection of the genetic wheel of samsara, just as the mountain is reflected in the lake below. This pressure to evolve in the lower frequencies becomes the desire to feel happy. And indeed, the 41st Gene Key is the pressure and the desire for a better future for all of us. It is the fantasy of utopia. And all desires are the foundation of the wheel of samsara, this cycle, endless cycle of suffering, understood by the ancients. Now, what makes it's special in addition to that is that genetically it's related to what is understood as the start codon. So within our bodies, there is a genetic signature that is the coding framework that begins a new initiation cycle. So every time that, as the body is encoding its genetics, comes across this sequence, everything that follows that sequence begins the new genetic code. And so this is a time where all of us, on some level, are going to feel this pressure to grow, to evolve, to want more. And what's going to distinguish the people who are remaining at the lower frequencies, who are staying in the shadows of fear, is whether or not they actually move on this pressure and why, right? So what are the motives behind that as well? And so there's a lot of energy going on right now to break out, if you will, and to move into a better future for all of us. And when we look at the gift of anticipation, what this actually means is this: by taking this pressure to seek new pastures and new experiences, if we do so for our greatest good and for the greatest good of others, and we're doing so in what we consider to be a high frequency, where we can use this gift to really evolve together. And the reason we call this anticipation is not only because there's a certain pleasure in waiting and in delaying gratification that you know is to come, but it's also about looking ahead. Principally, it's about looking ahead, anticipating what it's going to come next. But the best way to anticipate what's going to come next is to actually create it. And so, in the context of the quantum field that we live in this holographic universe, there exists a plane called the morphogenetic field. So the morphogenetic field is the essence of creation. It is the emanation that has created all, ourselves included, and that we create through when we create in our lives. And in this field, time does not exist. So there is an access point from which we can reach in and connect with the blueprint of evolution itself from the perspective of timelessness and pull down what is to come next. And so at this time, when our bodies are all magnetically resonating with a new pattern of creation within ourselves, we collectively can access these blueprints of creation as the sun is transiting through gene key 41. The next one is gene key 19. Gene key 19 is the key or the hexagram in which the Lunar New Year will take place. Now, the Lunar New Year begins with a new moon, and so this is a conjunction of the moon and the sun, and they meet together in gene key 19. So it's safe to say that sensitivity is going to play a key role in the year to come. Now, this year we're going to be really looking into ourselves as the cycle as it turns, the Chinese New Year, the theme is that of the Yin Wood Snake. And so Yin Wood, being the heavenly aspect, is the early growth of the seedling. It's the tender, vulnerable, and flexible new growth that derives its strength from the unseen, from its roots beneath the surface. And so that curiously ties in with the key in which it's activating, that is, the earth over water, or being nourished by the underground lake. So this is where we go into ourselves and really begin to reflect and assess on who we want to be now and for the future. And so the snake is yin fire. So we're in a 2 yin year, double yin. It's about receiving, about embracing. And it is about the quiet, potent energy capable of illuminating hidden paths through introspection, leading to subtle power and transformative growth. It's about fostering deep emotional and spiritual understanding, being strategic and resourceful through creativity, patience, and inner resilience. So by having this conjunction take place, this initiation process take place in hexagram 19 is, I'm sure, of no coincidence whatsoever. And so what will we look at? What is codependence? How do we isolate ourselves, or through our sense of need, overly depend on others? The purpose of sensitivity is to move us towards interdependence, how we can remain in our own and still be sensitive to the needs of others. And this neediness and isolation has roots deep within our genetic code, back to before civilization was ever realized, when we first started building tribes, when we realized that we really needed others to survive. And at this time, we were naturally much more sensitive to the needs of others, because without them, we wouldn't live. Now we're in a place where we still need other people to survive, but not in such a primal way. And so now we're in a place where we can actually look at how we are either codependent or interdependent with everything around us. It's not only the people, but with the planet and with all of the animals and all the other beings that are here. And what type of environment are we creating? And are we truly being sensitive to ourselves and others? And so this is the keynote, if you will, of the year to come. And with that, we'll begin to explore what that means in the transits. We're going to look at the new moon and full moon cycles for the upcoming year, as well as, since wood represents the planet Jupiter, we're also going to be observing Jupiter's movements and interactions through the lens of the lunar transits, so that we can get a deeper understanding of how we can expect to grow from the depths, from the roots of this Yin Wood Snake year. Before we begin exploring the transits as I see them, I think it's important to disclose that I don't pretend to know the future. What I do is analyze the patterns of creation and ascribe them with words in order to logically predicate the possibilities that could lead us into the future with a greater sense of security. And I do this, all of this is going to be filtered through my own genius, if you will, which is my activation sequence or my incarnation cross in human design. And as you can see, that my life's work is about the precision, contemplation, and teaching of cosmic systems through the language of light, evolving through the sanctity of surrender to divine inspiration, radiating devotion through the innocence and innovation, seeing the world through the eyes of a child to fulfill my purpose, that is simply to flow in equilibrium and harmony with the cosmic order. Nothing more and nothing less. How you're going to experience the things and that I'm going to describe utterly depend on you. Each of us is on our own journey of evolution in this life, both as a human being and as a soul. And so I'm going to look at this through the lens of the collective. As you can see, this is right now. I'm going to do my best to make this as fluid as possible because my slider only allows me to go through 90 days, but I'm going to cover the entire next 13 lunations from the Lunar New Year, as well as we're going to be tracking Jupiter's movements. As I mentioned before, Jupiter is the sign, or is the planet that rules wood. And you can see right now, we're all experiencing this Pluto solar conjunction that's opposite Mars. And that means that all of us right now are undergoing a sense of transformation of our identity, and specifically how we handle limitation, how we take a realistic look at life, as that's the key theme of 60. And this is the theme that the Plutonic theme that we have all been experiencing since COVID, when Pluto moved into 60. And we're going to fast forward through time. Beginning tomorrow, January 21st, begins the genetic new year. And so we can see that there's this cross going on where we're all still trying to figure out exactly how to move beyond expectation and accept things as they are. And so take this up to the Lunar New Year, which takes place right here. And so this is the first new moon in Key 19, which is the future human being that I mentioned before, and this is the tone of the year. If you look at each year like a symphony, this is the fundamental tone from which we're going to experience all that is to come, as well as the programming that we're going to receive after the shift of the sun into the start codon that electromagnetically turned on all of our start codons in our body. And given that it's also trine Uranus here in simplicity and the South Node in delight, we're going to be embracing sensitivity and mindfulness through the lens of how we can make our lives more simple and alleviate ourselves from the burden of expectation. And the first full moon is on, sorry, like I said, it's easier to sometimes just go like this, on February 12th, where we're looking at this juxtaposition of the keys 49 and 4. So this is about rebirth and understanding. Here we're going to have our first harvest, if you will, of how we can truly renew ourselves. And this is again conjunct with Mercury, but Mercury is in the key of desire. So how we are handling our desires. And all of us are experiencing these two global activations. One, the channel of transitoriness, and the other, the channel of recognition. And transitoriness is in part activated by Jupiter and by the North Node. And so Jupiter is our way of growth and expansion, and the North Node is the direction towards which we are evolving. And collectively, what this means is that, for one, we're all going to be moody because everyone is going to be emotionally defined at this time. And it's all, the ups and downs are going to be related to our desire for new experiences, because each of these channels, each of these activations is about the collective desire for new experiences. What is going to transform us? And it's also interesting to note that Pluto has moved into 41, anticipation. And so this deep transformational process that Pluto brings has shifted to the theme of anticipation that I mentioned earlier in the video. And while it's not going to stay there it's going to be in here actually for the most of the year. It shifts back slightly towards the end of the year, and then it goes into 41, where it will stay for the next 4 years, beginning in 2026. And in which case, we're likely going to see an immense period of transformation going on. Some of you may know that last year we officially entered into what's understood as the Age of Aquarius. That's when Pluto went into the upper reaches of 60 and has remained here and has not gone back into Capricorn. And it will not. It will retrograde back into 60 briefly into limitation towards the end of the year, but now we are full on in the Age of Aquarius and in the start of a whole new era. If you look at what happened 250 years ago, we can see that the United States was established, and there was the French Revolution. The Industrial Revolution really began to take off. And right now we're in a new type of evolution as human beings as we begin to really embrace technology and artificial intelligence. So it's going to be very curious to see how that plays out in the years to come. So then we'll move on to the second new moon, which takes place on the 14th of March. So now we're looking at the second new moon, the second narrative cycle, if you will, of the Yin Wood Snake year. And so this is on the axis of 3740, which you can see is one of the few programming partners that creates its own channel. And so the theme of this month is going to be about community and how the balance between individual needs and community needs are negotiated. And there's still this transitoriness activation going on where we're seeking new experiences. And so the general theme here, with the North Node conjunct Mercury with Jupiter, is going to be this cycle of growth through our conceptualization of our own humanity and what that actually means for us. And we'll take that into account as we negotiate within our communities for the benefit of everyone. So now we'll move forward to the second full moon, which takes place on the 14th of March. As you can see, this happens on the nodal axis. And the concepts of who we are, where we want to go, are going to be extraordinarily emphasized here, because that's what the nodal axis in and of itself represents, who we are and where we want to go. The themes of this particular activation are going to be diplomacy and humanity, but the shadow themes are conflict and turbulence. So depending on where people are at this particular time within themselves, whether or not they're reaching their roots down and gathering the strength there, is really going to determine whether and how they are either responding or reacting in this particular time frame. Because as you can see as well, the sun is effectively conjunct Neptune and Saturn. And so we're looking at how we imagine things, as well as examining our own internal structures and laws that we have set up for ourselves. Now look at the third new moon. And the third new moon takes place on the axis of 17-8, which is about far-sightedness and integrity, or opinion and judgment, depending on which frequency band you're in. And as you can see at this time, there's this huge cluster of planets here around the sun and moon. There's a major conjunction going on between the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, and Neptune. And this brings a lot into scope. We're either going to be judging everyone and everything, throwing our opinions all over the place, or we're going to be looking into the future. We're going to be taking on a greater sense of imagination and harmony and vision with our lives, and using this framework to assemble a new mode of growth for the upcoming cycle. And that culminates at the full moon on the 12th of April in the keys of 42-32, with the sun in 42 highlighting detachment from expectations and preservation of values that support community. The sun is sextile in Jupiter, which has moved, activating a period of growth through synergy, which is still trine Pluto and the South Node. And this trine is existing for the better part of the first half of the year. And so when we step back and we look at this particular interaction, this culmination point of growth and preservation, we have to understand that the synergy of growth is about this pressure to evolve. It's all being transformed through this lens and a deeper understanding of our origins. The fifth new moon on the 27th of April, as you can see here, highlights the themes of altruism and totality. So the cycle of generation here for this lunar cycle is going to be about understanding how what we give contributes to the whole, and that everything has purpose, everything has a reason, and how we fit into the greater picture. And at this time, Jupiter and Mercury are activating the global channel of sustenance. And so while we are in this spectrum of giving and understanding how everything fits together, we're also examining how we allocate our resources. And this is creating a cross with Mars opposition Pluto, creating a drive towards better leadership. The fifth full moon, as we progress through this cycle of altruism and totality, brings us to the axis of 23-43, which is simplicity and insight. And so here we're really going to reap the benefits of insight and knowing that come about because this is another one of those programming partners that creates its own channel. And so during this time, everyone is going to be experiencing brilliant flashes of insight into their own development, but particularly how they fit into and how they can assist the people around them in their development. Should be a very interesting time, especially since Uranus has shifted to key 8, which emphasizes a global pattern of innovation based on the expression of one's own uniqueness. And Jupiter has moved into key 12, highlighting a period of growth through choosing what is in alignment with your integrity. Which brings us to the 6th new moon, which takes place on the 27th of May. And this occurs along the axis of 1619, or 16:9 rather, which emphasizes a cycle based on versatility and determination. So this is about how we're going to adapt and grow in our development as we continue to innovate through our uniqueness and determine what is in alignment for us. Mercury being conjunct with the moon and the sun at this new moon brings a reevaluation of our ideas as well. And as you can see, Venus and Saturn and Neptune have created this global channel of initiation. And so this is going to be a great progressive drive on a collective level for all of us to want to begin new things, for all of us want to, in some ways, be the first to do something. But it's going to create an air of competitiveness in a way that should be very interesting to see for this upcoming cycle. Which brings us to the 6th full moon on June 11th. And this takes place in the keys of 45 and 26. So the highlight here is going to be synergy and artfulness. And so here we're going to really begin to reap the benefits of how we have been putting new things together for ourselves, as well as how we use our ego for the benefit of all, as that is what the theme of artfulness is. It's transcending pride, and instead of taking pride in who we are, it's taking pride of how we can get things done for ourselves and others. Additionally, we see that Jupiter has shifted into key 15. And so this artfulness that's taking place with the artfulness and synergy that's taking place on the full moon axis is going to be emphasizing a period of growth through magnetism, through our connection with the earth, and through the resonance of our unique identity and what we consider to be correct for us. The 7th new moon takes place on the 25th of June in the keys of 52 and 58. So this is about restraint and vitality. It's focusing on what is immediate and what brings us energy, what gives us strength. Continuing the cycle of magnetism, it's actually conjunct with Jupiter. And so the more we stay present with ourselves, the more we stay focused on what it is for us right now through this upcoming cycle, the more we're going to reap the benefits of this growth in magnetism. And this happens in the keys of 53 and 54. So this is about expansion and aspiration. So here we're going to really begin to reap the harvest of all that we have aspired for in the past year, since this last cycle, as well as coming to fruition cycles of growth that we initiated last summer. As we can see, the nodal axis has shifted from 22 to 47. And so the new pathway of direction of evolution is going to be towards grace and graciousness, coming from a place of transmutation. So how can we transmute the oppression of the past to bring about a greater sense of grace and graciousness for all? Meanwhile, the South Node and Mars have globally activated the channel of realization. And so at this time, there's going to be a drive for everyone to reflect on their experiences and gather the wisdom from them in order to attain their own personal sense of realization of what those experiences truly meant for them and how they can be brought forth in the future, in their upcoming lives. The 8th new moon takes place on the 24th of July, and it's in the keys of 56 and 60. So it's about enrichment through realism, this upcoming cycle. As you can see, they're virtually opposite Pluto. So it's going to be a transformative process of how we enrich ourselves, how we embrace realism and limitation in order to truly progress, in order to truly enrich our lives. And Jupiter has moved into the key of 39, the theme of which is growth through dynamism. Dynamism is a special type of provocation where we nudge others into their progress, into their highest selves. We take the opportunity to confront people in order to help them grow. So we can probably expect some unexpected jolts during that time, and from life and from the people around us into new areas of growth, or into areas of growth that we have wanted to go into but we're afraid to. And as long as we embrace Saturn's rule of acceptance and Uranus' cycle of innovation through self-assurance, through presence in the now, then we'll be fine. And that will take us into the 8th full moon on August 9th. That's in the keys of 7 and 13. And so here we're really going to examine and reap the harvest of how we choose to guide others and discern for ourselves who's correct for us to be with. And with Mercury opposite Pluto in leadership, it's going to enhance how we imagine and how we express our leadership capacity as individuals, because each of us has the capacity to lead and guide others in our own way through our own example. And Venus is conjunct with Jupiter here in 39. We're going to be leading others based on the dynamic aspects of our own values. And globally, the Sun and Mercury are activating this channel of leadership, which will add extra emphasis to how we are all truly leaders and in our own right, and through our own example. And so it's not going to be so much about telling other people what to do, in so much as being authentically ourselves and leading by example. Which brings us to the 9th new moon on the 23rd of August. And this takes place in the keys of 59 and 55. The theme for this upcoming cycle is going to be intimacy and freedom. It initiates a personal cycle of liberation through the shedding of the layers of conditioning we received in order to be more authentic. And Jupiter has moved into key 53, highlighting a period of rapid expansion through authenticity and mindfulness, which takes us into the 9th full moon on September 7th. And this takes place in the keys of 63 and 64, which brings to fruition some of the deeper things we have imagined and inquired within ourselves. It's a new illumination for our own direction. As you can see, it's very close to conjunct with the nodal axis. And so this is really about a pivot of direction through imagination and inquiry. Sun and South Node are reactivating this channel of realization. And so we're in a second week-long phase of reevaluating and reimagining our experiences in order to gather the wisdom from them, as well as taking advantage of this penetrating awareness brought about by Mars and Uranus, penetrating awareness into our own desires and understanding of who we are. The 10th new moon, or the 10th lunar cycle of the Yin Wood Snake year, brings us into the keys of 25 and 46. As you can see, they're opposite the station of Saturn and Neptune, which has been in acceptance. And so this is going to be really about embracing our integrity and moving beyond the burden of expectation in order to be able to delight in life, except by accepting things as they are, not as we expect them to be. And that's going to be the theme for this upcoming cycle as we move into the fall. And this 10th cycle culminates with the full moon on October 7th, which takes place in the keys of 48 and 21. And this brings to harvest a profound wisdom through the experiences that we've had so far this year, as well as emotionally evaluating our sense of authority, personal authority. And with Mars in 44, highlighting a drive for teamwork, and Venus in 50, bringing into value equilibrium, we'll also be looking at how we can achieve and maintain a harmonious balance within our relationships. The 11th lunation begins with the new moon on the 21st of October. And this takes place in the keys of 50 and 30. So this is going to be about establishing the equilibrium that Venus began looking at the teamwork and how we take place, or how we participate in our community, and how we can innovate and embrace the newness that is life as it's coming at us, while still maintaining this balance between our needs and the needs of others. Pluto has moved back into key 60. So we're going to be touching on the theme of limitation again, but this time it's going to be transforming the vestiges of our own limiting belief structures, how we choose to hold ourselves back, and how that affects the balance of our world. And Jupiter has also transited into 62, and so this is representing a period of growth where we're growing and expanding through precision, which is allowing the mind to be in service of the heart. And that cycle will culminate with the full moon on November 5th. And this takes place in the keys of 24 and 44. And so this brings back into focus how we work with the people in our lives, especially with Venus retrograding back into 50 to maintain the values and our own personal values and the collective values for the sake of equilibrium and harmony. Saturn retrogrades back into 36, which could upset the balance that we had established in terms of things that we were relying on, structures that we were relying on. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. It could be a slightly unstable period of turbulence going on here, where we're just simply embracing our own humanity and the ride that we're on. So taken together with Pluto in 60, it's going to be especially important to live in alignment, for we could all be facing our shadows of limitation, doubt, and experiencing some turbulence in the foundational structures of our lives. Now we fast forward to the 12th new moon, the penultimate cycle of this lunar new year. And we can see that it takes place in 14 and 8. So this is kind of special because it's conjunct Mercury and opposite Uranus. And so Uranus has been this whole time for the better part of the year here in key 8, where we're innovating based on our own sense of style and uniqueness, embracing our exquisiteness. And so this new moon with its center around competence is also bringing in our new ideas of how we can be more versatile, how we can really create new patterns of prosperity in our lives. It's kind of an exciting new year, especially after the the turbulence that we've experienced now with the Saturn coming in to 36 and Pluto remaining in 60 in limitation. So it's truly this last drive to overcome the limitations and ride the waves of turbulence with grace. And the nodal axis has shifted still into, or it still remains in 63, 64. So we're still going to be evolving through this sense of inquiry, through looking deeper into things and questioning the whys and what ifs that will alleviate our doubts of how to move forward as we progress. Which brings us to the 12th full moon, the fruition of that cycle, where we're experiencing it in the keys of 35 and 5. And so this is about having patience in the adventure of life, especially because the moon is transiently activating this channel of transitoriness. And so we're kind of all back in a bit of a moody stage collectively, where we're again with this desire to move into new experiences and to create new emotional experiences for ourselves. But this time there's going to be a greater element of restraint, of waiting for those experiences to come instead of going out for them, like perhaps we did the several times that this came about throughout the year. Which brings us to the last lunar cycle of the year, the 13th new moon, which takes place on the 20th of December and happens in the keys of 10 and 15. And as you can see, 10 being about naturalness and balanced with our own personal magnetism and amplifying our own personal magnetism. This is going to be about really embracing our own originality as we go through the last lunar cycle of the year. And given that it's conjunct with Mars, it's going to be especially the case that there's going to be a strong drive for us to embrace who we naturally are and allow that to really shine in the world. And as you can see, Pluto went direct again and went back into 41, where from this point on, it will stay here for the next 4 years or so, oscillating in the key of 41. So from this moment on, this sense of naturalness and magnetism is going to be really part of the next generative cycle of the evolution of humanity for the years to come. And that will push us to this culmination, this last fruitful harvest of the full moon of the Yin Wood Snake, which will happen in the keys of 38 and 39. As you can see, Mars and Venus are conjunct with the Sun here. And so this ushers in the new 2026 and closes out the Yin Wood Snake with an element of perseverance and dynamism. How we're going to grow and how we're going to grow with others is going to be the central theme for the upcoming year, as this sets the tone for that. As you can see, the nodal axis has shifted into 3740, activating a global emotional authority and a global theme of community. And so for several months, about 5, maybe 6 months, depending on how they retrograde, we're all going to become negotiators for a new balance of community entering into 2026, and for the first several months, probably the first half of 2026. This channel will be active in everyone, and this is again about establishing the balance, the proper balance between individual needs and the tribal needs and the collective needs, so that everybody gets what they need and everybody is enabled to prosper. So now we'll take a look at the 13th new moon, the real one, not the one I mistakenly named earlier. And this takes place on the 18th of January in 2026. As you can see, the nodal axis is still online with the channel of community for everyone. And we've returned to the 6056 axis, enrichment through realism. However, we're doing so with a major conjunction of planets going on here. The Sun and Moon are together with Mercury, Venus, and Mars for the first time in quite a long time, where they have all lined up in the same degree. And they are technically conjunct with Pluto here in 41. And so this point is going to be kind of a tipping point where we're going to go through a major reevaluation process of how we communicate, how we value things, and what drives us as we enter into the last lunar cycle of the Yin Wood Snake year. And this last lunar cycle comes to fruition along the same axis in which the entire Yin Wood Snake year began. And that is that of the 1933. So we can say that it fulfills itself in its last cycle, returning to sensitivity and mindfulness, except at this time with a community-oriented theme that is colored by this channel of regulation created by Mercury and the Sun. And this is about the just regulation of relationships based on needs, as well as the Moon and Earth together with Venus activating this channel of a witness, giving us a sense of direction through the expression of our stories, as well as gathering the stories of others and sharing them in a way that has impact on other people's lives. And with that, we'll bring this video to a close. As you can see, the Yin Wood Snake year offers us a tremendous opportunity for personal growth through deeper emotional understanding, through understanding how we fit into the bigger picture, how we fit into the whole, periodic moments of reevaluation to shed old patterns and embrace new ones, and ultimately move us closer to unity as a community in humanity. I hope this video has been insightful. I thank you so much for staying until the end, and I wish you a blessed Yin Wood Snake here.